Hi, my name is Jonna and I play football for Chelsea FC and for the Swedish national team. And you are listening to the Blue Day podcast.
Fellow Chelsea supporters, welcome back, my friends, to the podcast that will never end. Yes, this is the Blue Day podcast, and for Chelsea fans everywhere, every day is a Blue Day. I am your host, the creator, the man with a face for podcasting, Keith Lawrence, and joining me again this week is my good friend, a man who eats, sleeps, breathes Chelsea Football Club. It's Steve Wicks. Steve, welcome back this week. Not been a bad week, hasn't it, for Chelsea Football Club? Another trophy, another 3 points. Sun was out on Saturday.
Yeah. Listen, it's been a great week, and I don't think we should. I hope Chelsea fans don't take that Super Cup, lightly, because that's an achievement. That's brilliant. And although we didn't play to our best, we still won the thing, and it's a great start to the season. We were. It just shows sort of the gulf between the Premier League in terms of the top teams and the also rans, really, because we look really good Saturday.
Well, I want to talk about the Super Cup to begin with, and then we'll talk about a certain situation that happened at Stamford Bridge on Saturday that nearly affected me, and it did affect nearly 1,000 supporters. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the game itself against Crystal Palace and how I had to eat humble pie, Steve, actually, after the Saturday game, because I did mention last week about the lack of players potentially coming through from the academy and who's going to be the next breakout star. Well, after his debut goal, I had to eat humble pie rather than a chicken balti pie, and we'll talk about that. And obviously we'll do a preview to the massive game against the mid-table North London side, and I'm not talking about Tottenham. I'm talking about Arsenal, who couldn't buy anything from Brentford. So we'll talk about the Super Cup, a trophy that we last won in '98 by beating Real Madrid. Gus Poyet scoring late in that game. Over the last few years, we've lost on penalties to certain sides. Like to Bayern, we lost to Atletico. We got trounced when Di Matteo was in charge. And last Wednesday, we played Villarreal, who knocked out Manchester United to win the Europa League. And they are a tough out. They are a tough team to beat. They've got some good players, the Yellow Submarine. But I expected to win. There was only a few certain issues that I had with the lineup. I was surprised with Marcos Alonso starting, considering we had Ben Chilwell playing part of the squad, And looking at obviously the team that we had, I was surprised that Chalobah started rather than Thiago Silva. We'll talk about Trevor later on, but I was surprised with the lineup, Steve. But the first half, we were outstanding. We got the goal with Hakim Ziyech, which unfortunately damaged his shoulder. And we do hope he has a very speedy recovery, because he looks pre-season and even last week such a different player from last season.
He did. He played really well. First half, we were outstanding. And I thought, hold on, we're going to win this. We're going to romp this. But to be fair to them, a little bit like the Man United game, they do hang on, that team. They've got something about them where they never give up. And in the end, as a Chelsea fan, I hate to say it, I thought we were a bit fortunate to hang on to penalties, to be honest. But again, that shows the other side of Chelsea. That shows the grit and determination to win the hard way. And, we did. We won.
Well,
So,
well, I was just going to say, Steve, the main thing that I got out of it was how Tuchel managed the squad. And yes, the second half wasn't great to watch, and Villarreal got the equaliser from not some great work through our defensive midfield areas, but we managed to keep it on to penalties. And then he makes at the time, one of the most weirdest substitutions I've ever seen in my life by bringing on a keeper who came in for big money, hasn't impressed, threw a wobbly at Wembley, which from what I've heard since Wednesday, a lot of it has come out whereby it wasn't just Kepa's fault. But he comes on for the penalties. He saves 2 of them, and we win the trophy. And everyone, it seems, is happy to have Kepa. How crazy a game of football can work.
no, listen, I agree with that to a certain extent, Keith, but he must have something. We paid a huge amount of money for him in goalkeeper terms. I think he was the world's
Most expensive, yeah.
expensive goalkeeper. So we've got an investment in him. Now, if he goes now, we're going to lose an awful lot of money. So it's I think he's rebuilding him. He's building him up from the foundations again. Because he's young enough. He's, in goalkeeper terms, he's got a long time left. And that will do him the world of good, his confidence the world of good. And listen, that's a brave decision, but it works. And, when he goes into his stats, the manager, and says how many penalties he saved, and he looked into it and he was going to do that anyway if that happened. Dearie me, he's very, very shrewd the way he researches his games and his thoughts to do that. That is a big decision.
Well,
I don't
Steve,
think he's on at the moment, can he?
well, I was going to say, how many managers would actually have the guts? I was going to say something stronger then, but how many managers would actually have the guts to do that with 119th minute and go, right, sub goalkeeper, you're coming on?
Did they not do that in Holland, though, Keith? Did the Norwich goalkeeper come on for penalties?
Well, the last 5, at least 10 years, you've seen it more often than not, especially in cup games and what have you. But it's something that, again, growing up, I don't ever recall seeing that in the 90s. I mean, I know that certain players came on to take a penalty. I remember Chelsea in the Champions League against Liverpool in 2007. Jose put on 2 players late on in extra time just to take penalties, and they both missed. So it can work out sort of, good thing and a bad thing. But I was just shocked, and I just thought, what's he doing? Has he gone absolutely mad? So I wasn't sort of confident when it came to the penalties. But again, Kepa proved myself. He proved a whole load of Chelsea fans wrong. And it was amazing. And I mean this. It was amazing to hear Tuchel's explanation on it afterwards.
Yeah.
Whereby he just said, based on the stats, Kepa is a better penalty saver than Mendy. So why not?
Yeah, no.
Why not?
I think he's done his homework. He's done his homework. And as I said to you, listen, he's had a lot of lows, and it's quite nice that he's had a high now as a player. It's nice. And it's a rebuilding exercise. He's gone to the foundations. Now he's coming back up again. That do him the world of good.
And again, let's not forget, people sort of have rated him as the worst goalkeeper of all times. I think that's a little, for me, I'm Kepa's biggest critic, but I do think that's unfair. Bearing in mind, he was our first choice goalkeeper when we won the Europa League under Sarri. So as you say, going back to your point, there is a keeper there. And let's not forget, there was a time before we signed him, Real Madrid were persistent on him. Real Madrid really wanted him. There's a reason why, when you've got clubs such as Real Madrid, Barcelona before they've pretty much crumbled, there's a reason why these top clubs want these players. It's not just because of they like the agent or they like to stay in Spain. They're top players. So maybe, as you say, Steve, there is a player there. I'm not expecting him to play too many Premier League games. Cup games is probably different because Tuchel changed it round for the cup games. So I expect Kepa to be our cup goalie. So we shall see. You never know. Kepa might pull off a worldie again. He might pull off some good saves. And again, his confidence will grow because what I thought was quite telling, and I think this shows what Tuchel's done in the short space of time with the team ethos. Everybody, players, subs, players that weren't even part of the subs bench, all ran to Kepa at the final whistle after him saving the penalty.
Yeah, I think players appreciate mates having a hard time. And you also respect players on how they handle it. And he's still there. He's still working it hard. And he's still trying to prove, and he will be trying to prove, that he's a good goalkeeper. And every little, as Tesco would say, every little helps. And that was quite a big chunk on Wednesday.
Well, I will retract my statement by saying that I don't think Kepa will go. I don't believe he will now. I think Kepa will stay in the Chelsea squad. And again, he could actually be a useful addition to the squad. Again, as you say, Kepa pulls off a great performance like that. It gives Mendy something to think about, which keeps Mendy on his toes. How many times have you seen a number one goalie? He looks over to one side and sees a average number two, and he's thinking, I'm going to be number one here for the next couple of years. And his performance dips a little bit. That's why I'm thinking someone like Ederson at Manchester City, his performances haven't been the same for at least maybe 1 or 2 years. I know City won the league and what have you, but competition-wise, and as you say, Steve, it's important. When you look at the team, there's competition everywhere.
Oh, everywhere. I think that's dead right. And, sometimes, I think one of the biggest mistakes Arsenal have made, for instance, is selling Martinez to Aston Villa. I think that's a massive mistake. And they're looking to replace him with Ramsdale. And I'm looking and saying, well, why on earth did you sell, Martinez? He's been outstanding. So I think it's quite good, actually, especially with how we work at times, to give a player a real chance, rather than, oh, he's been crap, out the door, go, off you go. And I think he might come good. And mentally, and a goalkeeper needs mental strength. Trust me, that's the one position that does need it. That will do him a world of good and harden him to everything. And he might come back a better goalkeeper.
Well, one player that, as you say, his confidence will be through the roof is Trevor Chalobah. And what a week he's had. This is a guy who went out on loan last year in France, played every game pretty much, in Ligue 1. And people say it's a poor league. There's only one team that wins it. I do tend to disagree on that. You do get a lot of good technical players that play in the French league, and there's a reason why clubs around the world look at the French league for players. There's a reason for that, and Trevor Chalobah has got his chance. Had a good pre-season from what I can understand, and from what Tuchel has explained, the reasons why he's still in the team. I was shocked to hear after the game that he was linked with a loan move, and he was quite close to joining an unnamed Premier League and a Championship club. There was 2 clubs that were interested in him last week. That's all gone dead now. And, fantastic. Another academy product that's coming through. And you said it last week, Steve. There's that conveyor belt of players that are coming through, and they're not just average Joes. These are talented players that can make the step up to first-team football at Chelsea.
I don't think I've ever seen a better debut in the Premier League than that. As a centre-back, I look at that and that's where that boy could become our Van Dijk. Very rarely do I see a player so comfortable on the ball and is prepared to go past players. And everything. And then, when he got physical, Every bit of his game was, and what I love the emotion that only kids can give that have been at a club since they were 8 when he scored that goal.
Oh, yes, against Crystal Palace, yes.
Yeah, that to me was an iconic moment where you realise that, you know, everyone that's played for Chelsea has that feeling about the club, especially when you've been there from a young age. And it was just lovely. It was like a journey back in time, and I just thought he was absolutely. That boy has got everything. When he got physical, when Benteke tried to sort of sort him out, he was there. He had none of it.
Benteke left something on him, but Chalobah, although he was on the floor for just a little bit, he did get back up and he just carried on. He didn't react. He just carried on with it.
It was absolutely outstanding. And what I hope is when you see a player like that with that ability, that he is given the opportunity. But I think Thomas Tuchel will look at that and say, my God, that boy has got some ability. And he's come up the hard way from Chelsea. He's been probably away from Chelsea more than he's been at Chelsea. But he's learned his trade, and I'll tell you what, he looks one hell of a player. And I would go as far to say not only for Chelsea, but for England as well.
Potentially, yeah. There is a potential avenue again for him. Maybe not next year at the World Cup, but certainly the Euros in a few years' time. Most definitely, he's got to be in contention. But as you say, before we do talk about Palace, just want to wrap up the Super Cup. It was a great win. Yes, people see it as the European version of the Community Shield. I disagree. You know, every time Chelsea are in the Super Cup, I want to win it because it's a trophy. You know, you want that in the trophy cabinet to say this was a great side that won not just the Champions League or the Europa League, but the Super Cup as well. And you are part of the elite European sides that win the Super Cup. And it was great for Azpilicueta to lift the trophy. And again, it gives another little bit to Thomas Tuchel, another little tick, whereby he's got a little bit of safety in the bank. So if there is a little bit of a bad patch,
that's probably got him 2 weeks, a couple of games more if anything goes wrong.
Well, maybe.
No. Listen, when I remember listening to Talk Sport and the Liverpool fans coming on and saying, "Oh, we're this and we've done that and we've done this and we've done what they've done. We're one short now, aren't we? The World Club Championship." But it meant a lot to them that they won that cup, and it should do to us as well. Because all those people say, "Oh, it's like a charity shield." I wish they had the opportunity to have won that, i.e., be Champions League winners.
Well, I'm sure the North London sides wouldn't mind a trophy here or there, maybe. But before we do talk about Crystal Palace, and that's when I want to talk about a certain Trevor Chalobah, there was a bit of an issue last week, in regards to the Matthew Harding stand that Chelsea Football Club announced late on Thursday. Now, Steve, I sort of mentioned to you off air, and I think I briefly mentioned it last week, that I was looking to go to Palace. I had my ticket. I've got my season tickets in the Matthew Harding end, block 16 by the corner flag. I had to get a lateral flow test done for it on the Thursday. So I drove all the way to Charlton, and before I get out the car, my phone's pinging and it's going quite consistently. I'm thinking, okay, what's happened? I look, there's all these messages. Keith, have you seen this? Keith, I can't believe Chelsea are doing this. So I look on my messages, I look online, and Chelsea announced that due to issues with their contractors who were building the safe standing rail and making Matthew Harding more appeasable for people that want to stand on a more consistent basis, there was issues with the equipment, there was issues with what they were putting into the stands, and they couldn't guarantee the whole stand to be completed. So there was a potential that over at least 2,000, 3,000 fans would not be going to the game on Saturday. I was one of them.
Oh, God.
So On Thursday, I spoke to a few people that I knew had good connections to tickets, and I mentioned to them what was going on, and they said, "Hang fire, we'll see. See what happens." Chelsea then announced again that they would make a further announcement Friday at 3:00, so 24 hours before kickoff, which section of the stand would be closed, which section would be open. They said that they would work 24 hours to make sure it would be all sorted. Believe that how you will. And there would be an announcement further on. So Thursday night, I'm thinking, I'm not going. This is disaster. I've paid for my ticket. There's loads of other people I know who have been going to Chelsea far longer than I have. Probably have seen you play when you made your debut for Chelsea. They've been going to Chelsea, and they won't be going to the first match of the season. First game in 18 months with a full stadium. So on Friday, I find out from the club, I find out from other people within Chelsea and supporters that the block that I have my season ticket in is not going to be ready. So Friday at 3:30, I'm now thinking, that's it, I'm done. There's no way I can go. Thankfully, due to speaking to a few people that I know, I did manage to get a seat. And I would like to publicly thank this individual who helped me with this, and his name is Peter Trenter. So, Peter, if you do listen to this podcast, I know there's certain people that know Peter. Tell him thank you from Keith Lawrence and the Blue Day podcast, because if it wasn't for him, well, my weekend would have been absolutely ruined. It was down to him that he helped me with somebody to get a ticket. But the other reason why I wanted to bring this up was we have quite a bit of a fan support from across the world. And Steve, you know this, 'cause I've mentioned to you certain countries that have listened to this podcast. We've got an avid supporter who likes everything that we put on Instagram and Facebook, a chap called Marcus Carlisle. Now, this individual I do not know from Adam. I've never seen before Saturday, so complete stranger. I find out from Facebook that he is at Dublin Airport. He's booked flights to come over for the first home game of the season because he bought tickets. He found out that the tickets he's bought was in the section that is not available now. So he's at the airport trying to get a Chelsea ticket. Thankfully, I've managed to get him one that was at the West Stand upper. So I told him, I've got you a ticket. It's yours if you want it. He flew all the way from Dublin on the Friday afternoon for Chelsea. Met him, gave him his ticket. He had a wonderful time. And I felt quite pleased, not only just obviously to see a supporter of the podcast, but the fact that I felt quite relieved to help somebody that was in need. The fact that he was at the airport pretty much about to leave. He was about to leave after thinking about checking in, and all of a sudden he won't be able to go. Managed to get him a ticket, saw him. It's great to see him. But my God, Chelsea have got a lot to answer to. I know they said on Friday that the fans that had a ticket, they can get a refund if they wish. And if they want it, they can get a free home ticket for any Champions League group stage game.
Yeah.
Now, Steve, I just want to get your thoughts quickly on it. My personal opinion on it, I think Chelsea have ballsed up massively. I think the company that was in charge of building the safe standing at Matthew Harding cocked up massively. And the impression I got from supporters, the feedback I got from the supporters that missed out was a case of, well, they had enough time to do it. They had 18 months and they spent enough time sorting out the West Stand upper where the tickets are more expensive and you get a better clientele rather than us riffraff that sitting by the corner flags and we only pay £40 less than what they do. So, Steve, just want to get your thoughts on it, whether or not you heard about it from last week and what have you, and just a complete, utter shambles.
Yeah, listen, the one thing that the one thing that slightly makes me upset is that Chelsea has become a very corporate football club, and the corporates, and that's why at Stamford Bridge sometimes the atmosphere isn't as good as it normally would be or has been in the past, is because, and obviously running a football club costs an awful lot of money, but they must never forget the people that really are the people that matter, the true Chelsea supporters, who, exactly like Marcus, who you explained, that would come all the way from Ireland and you know, and he's paid for his flights and he's got probably a hotel room sorted. You know, to me, every Chelsea fan matters, but Chelsea have become very corporate, and that's the one thing I don't like too much, is that view that maybe we look after the big wigs rather than the life and soul of the club.
908 supporters. Those are how many seats were not available. There was quite a few on Block 16, which is by the corner flag near the East Stand, and there was about over 200 of the corner flag near the West Stand. And there was one story that I did hear from. The Blue Day podcast got an email. If you do wish to get in touch with us, get in touch at the Blue Day Podcast at gmail.com. Gentleman by the name of Jim, and he asked me not to mention his surname, but Jim emailed me on Thursday night when he found out what was going on, and he told me the story of he was looking to take his son. Him and his wife was looking to take his son to his first game. They promised him when he was young he would take him to his first home game. That was supposed to be last year, but because of lockdown, it weren't to happen. So they waited a year. So he promised him he would take him to the first home game. He, unfortunately, was affected with the seats. He was meant to be in by the corner flag as well. And he told me the story whereby he was looking to buy the tickets, and unfortunately, his wife passed away by the time lockdown finished. Wife passed away about 4 months ago. So he made a promise to his son that no matter what, he would make sure his son goes to Chelsea for the first home game, because they promised him last year. Unfortunately, I got an email from him on Sunday. I emailed him back to hope he's okay and hope his son's okay. His son's name was Jacob, and just wished him, hope he's okay. And if you did find tickets, he lives southeast London. Emailed back saying he weren't able to go. His son was upset, but he explained to his son that it wasn't his fault, what have you. It was down to the club, but he promised he would help him out. And it sort of put a lump in my throat a little bit, because I'm thinking, again, as you just said, Steve, Chelsea is for everyone. Chelsea, it don't matter what race, don't matter what gender, doesn't matter what age you are. If you're a fan of Chelsea, you have the right to go. And if you've bought a ticket before the game, you should be able to go. And the fact that he weren't able to go, and his son, who's 7 now, weren't able to go because of that, it did put a lump in my throat. I did start thinking about him when I was there at the game. But so what I have done, Steve, here at the podcast, we do care about supporters, and I've sorted out a Megastore voucher for him. Put in 50 quid. I've sent the Megastore voucher over to him, so it's in his name. I've sent it over, so if there's anything that he wanted, he can have at the Megastore from the Blue Day podcast.
Oh, that's a lovely gesture, Keith. That really is a nice gesture. And sometimes I wish Chelsea thought like that, because we are, we're a little bit. The club is renowned for being a bit cutthroat sometimes, and I think it's But having said that, when we did the Eddie McCready book in Under the Bridge, and there was about 3,000 people turned up, and more than anyone had ever expected. There was a message that Roman had paid for all the drinks put a thing behind the bar that would pay for all the drinks. He was going to pay for all the drinks all night. So, is it Roman, or is it the people that are running the football club? You know, he seems to me, as I said, there were 3,000 people there, and they had a few drinks. That would have cost him a fortune, but he paid the whole thing. So I think that there are, and I'm sure, you know, he's got those blue eyes that you think, dearie me, are quite sort of, but he's quite a kind person at times. And does he know what's going on? Is it people working at Chelsea that don't treat the true supporters with respect? And what I think they've got to understand is every season ticket at Chelsea is a lot of money at different levels. At different levels. And at the lower level of a season ticket is probably 10 times as much as it used to be. So therefore they deserve respect. It shouldn't be, and every Chelsea player, every Chelsea supporter deserves respect, whether you're paying top end or, because actually it's the boys we're talking about that will sing and cheer the team on more than the people at the top end that might get a little bit embarrassed and are in their box watching the game rather than singing and cheering the club on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so,
and again, Chelsea is for everyone. And when being there at Stamford Bridge on the Saturday, I want to talk about the Palace game in a minute, but I just want to mention about the atmosphere. It was fantastic to see, you know, people around me, people hugging to say that they haven't seen them for 18 months, you know, people that normally they see once every other week and they haven't probably seen them for 18 months. It was great to see people sort of interact with their friends and interact with each other, hugging each other and whatever. It just felt the last year was a complete dream.
Yeah.
Just felt like last year didn't happen, whereby we had to suffer horrible punditry on Sky and BT day in, day out, and just watching football in empty stadiums, and just drove people insane. But yeah, as you say, it was great for me to help out, you know, a fellow supporter in Ireland, and I'm hoping with the voucher it'll come good for Jacob, especially for him being a young Chelsea supporter.
Just do me a favour when you speak to them. Just send my love and condolences, because that's a really sad story. Really sad story.
So I want to sort of switch gears a little bit and talk about a little bit something more happy, and that was our first home game against the Crystal Palace side. And I know we mentioned it a little bit last week, Steve, that I saw Palace as a bit of an unknown quantity. You didn't know what to expect with a new manager and how they would set up. So I was partly expecting two results. One, us to smash them. The other one, we'd lose 1-0 because Palace would have defended for 89 minutes and they'd beat us on the counter. But thankfully, I was wrong with the latter. We had a very good game. You know, Tuchel set up again with Alonso on the left, which I was a little bit surprised about. But then after seeing what he can produce against sides like Palace, and I think there's going to be a lot of teams in the lower edges of the Premier League that's going to struggle, and I think this could be a season where Alonso will start more than he's benched. But he came on. Trevor Chalobah kept his place. Christensen came on, and you know, I know you're a fan of Christensen. He just looked so composed. He just looked completely and utterly in control. Didn't put a foot wrong, and he looked like the experience of him coming on in the Champions League final and being a man possessed, trying to keep a clean sheet has helped. And I think his home nation's performance in the European Championships, with him playing every single game of that, has helped, because he looks a different player.
Yeah, I think we've talked about him in the past, and I've always maintained I think he's got everything. I think on the ball he is absolutely could be superb. And it's like getting a new player. When you know he was very good for Chelsea at the end of last season, he really started to look the player he should look. Um, and as I said, Chalabar was absolutely superb. And you're looking now, and what they're doing is they're learning their trade from the absolute master, Thiago Silva. And Chalobah being the first team now and learning from arguably one of the best ever centre backs. He has learned, and as I said, he looks absolutely a superb prospect.
Well, this is something I wanted to talk to you about, Steve, because this is one other thing I wanted to get your opinion on. I know I sort of briefly mentioned it yesterday, but you being a centre back yourself and coming through the ranks at Chelsea, can you relate to Trevor Chalobah's sort of pathway in regards to trying to break into the first team? And then now that he's pretty much, I can't see him going out on loan now, not after the last two performances. I can't see that. I don't think Tuchel would do that. But how important would it be for Trevor to stay at the club, bearing in mind the experience that he has to work with the likes of Rudiger, who's been at the club for a while, Thiago Silva, who, my God, has represented his country. He's won so many trophies in his own right. Kurt Zouma, who's been at the club for quite a long time as well. Is it important? How sort of crucial is it for a young defender to, he might not play every week, but he can at least stay at the club for at least another year and learn from the experienced centre backs? Did you have that sort of similar thing when you was coming through?
Yeah, it was slightly different because what happened is we had the combination league, which was a very, very good league where people that weren't playing in the first team, played in the reserves. So I was a 16-year-old kid playing against John Radford or Ray Kennedy at Arsenal or Chris Jones at Tottenham or Jeff Hurst at West Ham, and I learned my trade the hard way playing against seasoned, professionals. But the one thing I will say is that when I played in the reserves alongside John Dempsey and Marvin Hinton, I owe those two an awful lot, especially Marvin Hinton, because he taught me through a game. And he helped me unbelievable. And Marvin was, everyone that knows him will tell you he's a fantastic bloke. And he took the time. And for him, I think Pep said it about Man City, about Foden will be better off staying at Man City, learning on a day-to-day basis, playing with better players in training, an awful lot. And I think Trevor will do that with regard to Chelsea. He's got the best there is, I think. I think we got some, how many caps have all those players got between them? I think it'd be quite an amazing.
Yes.
And for him to work with them on a day-to-day basis with his ability could be a perfect combination. And I would not let that boy go out on loan because I think with what I saw on Saturday, it was one of the, as I said, the best Premier League debuts. I think it was his debut, wasn't it, Keith?
It was, yes, yeah.
And the way he went past, I liked Maguire in the Euros because he took the ball forward and he went forward and drove and made space for the midfield players. But Chalobah took that to another level. He was beating players and going forward, and he was beating them with ease. As I said, super player, super prospect, and I wouldn't let him go out. Did I not read that he played 138 games, league games or something, where he's been out on loan to?
I know he's been at Huddersfield as well in his early sort of career, and as you say, as we mentioned before, he was out in France last year, but it was his Premier League debut. What a strike! And what an iconic moment with him on his knees, crying. And again, real men cry. That's sort of the expression that you do hear sometimes. It was an iconic moment, and it just sort of a huge relief for the young guy. And from the interviews that I've heard from him, sort of over the last couple of years. He seems like a nice, humble guy. His
Nice
brother
guy.
played for Chelsea as well, Nathaniel Chalobah as well. So there is a family connection with the club as well. So I hope that Chelsea are not going to be foolish and waste this talent. You know, because I feel that with Tomori, we could have kept him. Again, that's by the by, he's gone now. But I hope he doesn't fall into the trap of someone like Tariq Lamptey, who has got a lot of promise, but then because of certain issues, he then goes permanently. And I can't see that, but I do feel that Chelsea could save themselves 50 million euros now. They could save themselves 50 million euros by not signing that defender from Seville and keeping Trevor.
And with all due respect to someone that I've got the utmost respect for, Thiago Silva is 36 years of age. So he's got an opportunity. Tuchel might look at it and say, right, when he's, he's a perfect player to bring in.
And Rudiger's in his 30s as well.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of look at that.
And I like seeing young Chelsea players playing for the club. I really do. And, to see, I remember the feeling I had when I pulled that blue shirt on for the first time. And Chelsea were my favourite team. When I was a kid, they were my favourite team. And it was the greatest feeling you could ever have. And you have to pinch yourself a little bit because you think, is this really happening? Is this really happening? Because no matter what people say, no matter how much stick you get, to actually achieve and play and pull the great blue shirt on, it's a great achievement. A great achievement.
Wasn't just Chalobah who scored. Alonso scored a very good free kick, one of his specialities, and I actually thought Alonso played very, very well. And as I said before, I think that this season he will start more games than on the bench because of, from what I can see already after 1 week, the gap in quality in the Premier League. You know, you've got a certain elite, and then you've got the ones that I feel there's going to be a lot of teams really scrape and claw them for points this season. And I think Palace are going to be one of those teams. I even put down Southampton. I think Southampton will struggle. I think Burnley, Brighton will struggle. Wolves, I believe, will struggle. So with Alonso's ability to go forward and be a presence, and he's got that free kick ability about him, there is a chance Marcos Alonso's Chelsea career could be re-energised because of this, because he's got that capability to get forward, and it's another option, especially on that left-hand side, if someone like Pulisic is on the left or Mount on the left. Just a quick one about Pulisic as well. I thought getting decent goal against Palace, although it was a little bit lucky. I thought the goalkeeper could have done a bit better, if I'm being picky. But it's a huge season for Christian Pulisic. For me, it's not just how many goals he scores, not just how many assists. He's got to stay injury-free.
Yeah, no, I think
he has to stay injury-free.
I think, if I'm honest, he's the one that when he came, I thought he's going to be a player, and he hasn't quite got to the stage where I thought he would be by now. He still looks to me to be a part player rather than an established player, a bit part player. You know, where he comes in, he does it well for 1 or 2 games, gets a couple of goals, but he never ever has a real run. And I think now Lukaku's come in, you know, there's one less place that is going to be there up front, and he might find it hard. But I think Chelsea have, in terms of strength in depth, probably now with Man City not having a 9 at the moment, probably got the best squad in the league. I think.
Interesting argument.
They've got the best in-depth squad in the. You know, when you look at the players that didn't play on Saturday, and you're thinking, my God, you know, we've got internationals that didn't even play Saturday. You know, and I think that we've got one of the best squads in the country.
Kante was rested. Obviously, Lukaku weren't signed in time, and also he was isolated as well. Yeah. But you've got, and this is the interesting thing about Chelsea. Chilwell was on the bench, but you've got players that weren't even on the bench. Whether they were at the ground or they were at home, but you've got players like Danny Drinkwater, Bakayoko, Dujon Sterling, who was part of pre-season beforehand. You've got players like that. It'll be interesting what happened. Ross Barkley.
Yeah, the forgotten man.
He was the main one. Ross Barkley. These players, how are they going to get into the side? Loftus-Cheek, he was nowhere near the bench either. So the standard is getting higher and higher because of the success Chelsea have at this moment in time, being European champions, and they want to be champions of England again. And it's been a while. 2017, in Chelsea standards, it's a bit of a dry patch, but this could be the year. I'm not saying it will be. I don't believe. I'm still not adamantly sure Chelsea could win it this season, but there's a chance. And massive games coming up now. Yes, we've beaten Palace. Palace I thought were poor. Zaha, for me, completely overrated. The one player that I was interested in looking at was the young defender, Marc Boulay, former Chelsea player. Palace signed him permanently. I can see why perhaps we did sell him on at this stage of his career, but I can also see a player there.
Yeah.
I can see a player there. He looked okay. He's got stature about him. Pace, iffy, if I'm being brutally honest. But
listen, I think I said to you the other day, having been there, it's a very important position, centre back. And usually centre backs come in a lot older than really sort of, and also he hasn't played in the Premier League, is it? It's going to take him quite a long time to adjust, having played in the Championship last year. And for all, he looks a good player, and he looks a good player last year, but he's got to adjust to, and that's going to take him 4 or 5 games to get used to playing in the Premier League. And also, can you imagine the kid of all the games you're playing against your old club Chelsea at Chelsea. So it's a big day for him, and maybe the day got, and again, the first game with supporters, so all in all, things were quite stacked against him, weren't they? So, but he'll come through that, and he's a good player.
I think he will. I think I can't see Palace going down. A bit early to say. I don't think Palace will go down. I think they might have just enough about them to stay up. But the one thing that did not annoy me, because we were 2-0 up at this point and we were cruising, but Timo Werner's performance, I'm hoping now with Lukaku coming in, it will take the pressure off Timo, because I still think that he's playing like he has to perform week in, week out, that he has to score week in, week out to justify the price tag, to justify what type of player he is. His touch was terrible Saturday. His running's great. His movement's great. His touch is terrible at the moment. And it was like that last year. And I'm just hoping with Lukaku coming in to ease the goal-scoring pressures off him, with Havertz coming into the squad as well, because bearing in mind he came on as a late sub, didn't really need for him to come on. But his massive season for Kai Havertz as well. Timo's got a tough season ahead of him if he carries on the way he is, especially with Mason Mount, the way that he's consistent with his form. There could be a possibility Werner could be on the bench for a lot of the games this season.
Listen, you earn the right to play, and you're judged by your performances. And there comes a time when running about and putting effort isn't good enough at this level. It's your end product that counts, and you're going to be judged on your end product. And his touch on Saturday, he had a chance for it was dreadful. It was dreadful. Now, I think he's getting away with it because he's working so hard, and the Chelsea fans always respect people that work hard for the team. but there comes a time where he's got to be judged on goals
I agree.
and
Yeah.
what he's achieving. He's almost like getting worse at the moment. His performances are going backwards. And I think it's because psychologically, it's in his head, I've got to score, I've got to score. And if you ask any striker in the world, once you start thinking about it too much, it becomes harder. And that's why you get players. A great exponent of that was Tommy Langley. Tommy Langley would, if a ball went into the box, bang, it's a goal. But if he went through, he broke, and he had just the goalkeeper to beat, that was Tommy's weakest thing. He never had the composure to do that. He wasn't the best finisher 1-against-1. And I think it's got in Werner's head as well. And I think that's... Personally, I think when Lukaku comes in, I don't think there's a place for Werner at the moment.
I would be surprised if he starts on Sunday. My front three, and I'd like to talk about the Arsenal game now, as we are sort of looking at ahead of the weekend's game. I can't see Werner starting. I would have the front three of Mount, Lukaku, and Havertz.
Yeah, I agree.
Jorginho or Kovacic with Kante. I would have Reece James right wing back. I would actually start Alonso because Alonso's got a bit of confidence now. He was part of that team for the Super Cup, played very well against Palace. Keep the form players in. I would actually keep Rudiger, Christensen in there, but I would take Trevor out the firing line against Arsenal. I would keep him out of the starting 11, and I would put Azpilicueta there, just for the experience. Bearing in mind, we lost twice to Arsenal last season, twice. A very poor Arsenal team. Thiago Silva's fit, yes, he is. Yeah,
I'd play Thiago Silva.
Would you play Thiago?
I'm not a lover of Azpilicueta at centre back.
Okay, that's interesting.
No, but I don't mean that in a, I think if you've got Thiago Silva and you've got the other, I'd play those three. But the problem is you don't get out of Azpilicueta going forward what you get out of Reece James. So I don't know. I think I'll tell you what, that you've just pulled out of the bag there. That is a tough team selection, but it's one the manager will love to have. Love to, and this is what I'm saying about our squad here. You know, Chilwell must be wondering when he's going to poor bloke. He went all through the Euros without getting a game. He's not come back to Chelsea. He's not playing in now, and he's a very good player. And I feel sorry for him.
He's an extremely good player, and there was one thing that I was talking to the chaps beside me. We was talking about, how I was surprised Alonso was playing, but with Chilwell, and I saw Chilwell as a better left back. But there were some games that Chilwell played as a left wing back that he perhaps wasn't great in. Although I do like Chilwell, I'm not sure Tuchel is a fan of his.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting how it goes down this season. That's why I personally believe Alonso will play more than he is on the bench. But Arsenal is a huge game. Yes, Arsenal are not doing very well at the moment. They got found out badly by Brentford. They are missing players. We have to go for the juggler. We have to bombard them at the Emirates. We have to score, not just early, but I think first. If we score first, the crowd will get on the Arsenal fans' back, or Arsenal players' backs, and the Arsenal players do not like that. And I just think this game is there for the taking for Chelsea. We've got a very good chance to dominate not just the possession, but the forward play and not give Arsenal a sniff. The only threat Arsenal have is Smith Rowe. I think Smith Rowe's a very talented footballer. That's it. And if we don't get 3 points against Arsenal, that would be a huge disappointment for me personally.
Yeah, they've been a bit of a bogey team to us the last few seasons.
Yes, they
Keith.
have.
But,
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm a little bit
uh,
sceptical.
and I'll
Because
ask
of
you a
Sunday.
question about North London. Did you expect Man City to go to Tottenham on Saturday and get beaten 1-0?
No.
You know, Highbury and Tottenham, the old White Hart Lane especially, were two very hard places to go and win. And there's something about Arsenal, when you least expect them to win, they win.
Yes, that's my point. FA Cup finals. We've lost twice against them in FA Cup finals.
Yeah. And I think you earn the right to play. So I think the way we start the game is very, very important. And I think we've got to get them by the neck and shake them. And what we can't do is allow them back into a game. We can't allow them back because, they're having a bad time. But playing Chelsea alone, again, with winning the European Champions League, comes a thing that they will look at it and say we're playing, the Champions League champions. So it lifts everyone against you now wants to beat you, as Man City found out.
Good point.
But looking at the way we're playing, looking at Lukaku, probably he'll make his debut, I'd imagine, on Saturday. And the way the team played on Saturday against Palace, we're never going to have a better chance of beating Arsenal, put it that way. If we start and we do get a goal and we do start dominating the game, then the Arsenal fans will turn. And that's when Arsenal players will find it difficult. And that's when it's important for us, like in the Super Cup, to get that second. But it's a game that I fully expect us to win.
Well, Steve, for the benefit of the Blue Day podcast Score Predictor League, which congratulations everyone who is listening to this at the moment who is part of it. Everyone got 3 points. One person actually predicted the score right, so they got 5. So they're in the lead at the moment. So everyone got 3 points. I will upload a table later this week on our Facebook and Instagram page. But Steve, just for the benefit of this predictor league, and this is probably the only time we're going to be on air before the Arsenal game, what's your early prediction for Sunday?
I think Chelsea 2-1.
I'll write down Ars 1, European champions 2. No worries. No worries. That is fine. Well, it'll be interesting come Sunday because, again, the games are coming thick and fast. We've got Arsenal Sunday, Liverpool the week after, and then in this international break. So these next 2 games are massively important. But, Steve, just want to wrap up the show because we've sort of discussed at length about the sort of previous 2 results on what's coming up on the podcast. Now, we've got a few shows between now and the eventual first anniversary of the show, which falls on the 8th of September. That's when the first episode came out. So we're going to do a couple of special shows with that. I'm hoping to get a icon, a pure, true Chelsea icon on the show for a player interview that will be announced hopefully between possibly end of August. Might even do it transfer deadline day. Maybe. We'll see. But negotiating with 1 or 2 Chelsea icons at the moment to be a guest on the show. So hopefully we will announce something very, very soon with that. But we've got some good guests potentially lined up as well between now and the end of the year. So that'll be great. So if you're a fan of Chelsea from the 70s, the 80s and the 90s, this is definitely a podcast for you. And the feedback we've got, Steve, from the interviews that I conducted over the summer, and again, believe you me, it was a stressful summer to get players not just to come on the podcast, but to actually contact them, bearing in mind people live all over the globe. To have people like Gavin Peacock, Kevin Hitchcock, Tony DeRigo as well, our latest player interview, Neil Barnett, Spy. We had a 2-parter with him. That was
phenomenal interview that we had with him. And thank you for everyone who's downloaded those episodes. But people like John Sparrow, Darren Barnard, Chris Hutchins as well, fantastic people who, people might not think it, but they still hold Chelsea close to their heart, despite the fact that it might have been some time ago. They still care about Chelsea. They still see Chelsea as a great club, and they still enjoy their time there. So what we're hoping to have planned next year for 2022 is something quite special. So the players, the ex-players that we're looking at, I'll basically give you guys a clue. There's 3 years that is quite significant to Chelsea Football Club that we're hoping to get people that were part of them squads, that were part of them years at Chelsea. So, Steve, I'll give you the clues as well. So it might give you an idea of the caliber of icons and fantastic people that I'm looking to get in. Steve, are you ready?
Yeah, go on.
Fantastic. 1992, 30 years ago, the Premier League was born, and Chelsea were part of the Premier League. 97, 25 years since we won the FA Cup under Ruud Gullit. And I can't believe I'm saying this. This is making me feel old. Next year will mark 10 years since we first won the Champions League in 2012. So those are the clues with regards to player interviews for next season. And this is going to be a challenge. Some are going to be more easier than others to find. But Steve, you've known me for a few months now. I like a challenge. When it comes to finding somebody, I will work my fingers to the bone to try and find them. So,
well, it's good you had Gianfranco Zola's number then, wasn't it?
You're not meant to give the game away. Don't give the secrets away. But that's a plan we have for the podcast as well in regards to sort of the player interviews, and we are going to hopefully bring more content to you. Again, because we've got some fantastic people that not only listen to the show but want to be part of the show. So we do appreciate everyone listening to myself and Steve Wicks on a weekly basis, and also the ones that love the interviews. Because Steve, whether you've seen it on Facebook, the feedback that we've had from people for interviews has been superb.
Yeah.
So that's the plans we've got for the next 12 months and beyond coming up on the podcast. But between now and Christmas, we're going to sort of do quite a bit more. We're also actually looking to do another shirt raffle. Steve, earlier this year, we did a shirt raffle to raise money for the Paul Canaville Foundation, which raised quite a bit. So we're looking to do another one of them. That will be announced shortly. So stay sort of tuned to the Blue Day podcast with that. But yeah, fantastic sort of times now to be a Chelsea fan. Who knows what the future holds, but this podcast is just going up and up and up, and we appreciate everyone who is following us and liking our content, Steve.
Yeah, and Keith, I think what you did for that little boy epitomises you, and it also says a lot about you as a podcast. That was a fantastic gesture, and proud of you. And I'm pleased you're having success. You deserve it.
Well, Steve, I appreciate that. Your cheque of £100 will be in the mail.
You said it was 1,000 if I said that.
It's on commission. So that's this week. We will be back next week to review the Arsenal game. I will either be in a fantastic mood because we've trounced a mediocre North London club, or I'll be in a foul mood because VAR or certain Jorginho decided to not turn up. So that's all from me. Steve, is there anything else that you'd like to mention to end this show?
No. I've said it all, Keith, haven't we? Really?
You've said it all. Well, you said it all, so I will end it. Before we do go, follow us on Instagram, where you will find some pictures and videos of I've done some videos of myself on Saturday in the Shed End.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Blue Day Podcast, where our interviews are up on there. Find us on Twitter, Blue Day Podcast. Find us on YouTube, The Blue Day Podcast, where this episode will be out, as well as everywhere else you can find your favourite podcasts. And all I've got left to say is, fellow Chelsea supporters, is stay safe and carefree. Chelsea!
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.